All right, welcome back. I want to begin the task of defining and modeling communication because if we're going to study something, we should have a good understanding of it. And I want to start with the idea that communication is a gift. I know it's a little cheesy, but think of it this way. We have this really great ability to communicate, and it has been passed down to us from generation to generation throughout our history, throughout our evolution. It started with the gift of stimulus and response from single-celled organisms to the gift of gesture and communication, communicating through movements and visual cues of more complex organisms. The gift of speech from our early Homo sapien ancestors 300,000 to 200,000 years ago, the use of language and spoken word. The gift of written language 5,000 years ago. The gift of the printing press 500 years ago. The gift of audiovisual technologies over the last 200, 100 years. The internet, a gift that's pretty recent. So when it comes to communication, we can definitely say that human beings are gifted. We've inherited a lot. I also start with the word gift or the idea of gift, because the word communication etymologically is related to the idea of a gift. And I'm taking this from Speaking into the Air by John Durham Peters. Communication in English comes to us from the word communicare in Latin, which didn't mean what communication means now. It meant to impart, to share, or to make common, and it was more related to the idea of giving something like a gift. The root word mun in communication comes from the word munus, which is a gift that's offered. So the folks who were speaking Latin didn't use communicare like we use communication today. The word communication enters English in the 14th and 15th century, and by the 17th century, the 1600s or so, it starts to mean something more familiar to us today, a kind of like mind-to-mind connection or a soul-to-soul connection. And by the 20th century, the word communication's everywhere, right? It's being studied formally in academic departments. People are really concerned with communication for several reasons. There's ideological wars and propaganda, advertising and commercialism. We have mass media technologies, and people are worried about communication in their own relationships and in their own lives and at their own workplaces. And so communication by the 20th century comes to mean a lot of different things. And I want to boil this down to 5 things that John Durham Peters identifies communication meaning in its modern senses in English. The first is the idea of communion. Communication can mean this partaking in community, forming a community, to belong to a group. And in this way of thinking about communication, receiving is emphasized. Think of the Catholic communion. You receive communion. So partaking in a group, using communication to kind of constitute a group through receiving the group. A second meaning is linkage or bridging, and we see this in the idea of steam communication, or the railroads is what they meant by steam communication. Oddly enough, communication also used to mean sexual intercourse. And the funny thing is, the word intercourse used to mean to have a conversation, and now communication means that. So they've kind of flip-flopped in meaning. But a sense that communication is linking two things, bridging two things. Communication can mean to transfer, as in a one-way transmission. When it comes to heat, it is communicated. When disease, as we're learning now, it is communicated. It is transferred one way. Exchange also is one of the meanings of communication. So not just one way, but a transfer times two, a kind of mutuality. I talk, you talk. I share, you share. This is where this idea of like true communication that we think of today starts to take shape, where we haven't truly communicated until we've shared our inner experience. And this last sense of communication is related in the last video to the word communications that I was talking about as the means of building relationships, the infrastructure of communication, the symbols, the emails, the technical stuff that allows us to communicate. So these are just 5 different senses, and I wanted to start here as we begin this journey of defining and modeling the thing that we're studying, communication. In this lesson and over the next several videos, we're going to do a few things. We're going to discuss the process of how terms like communication get defined. We're going to explore different definitions of communication, and we are going to learn different ways of looking at communication or modeling communication. This stuff goes along with what you're reading in the textbook and goes a bit beyond that as well.